Hey guys, today's video is going to be all about classical Rome. So remember at the end of this, you should have really good notes that will help you to make an understanding or help you understand and make sense of classical Rome so that you know it well enough that you could teach your classmates. So just a brief overview, like what Rome was about, big picture, summary, who, what, where, when, why. Roman civilization, when we're talking about it, we're actually talking about both Rome, the city, and an empire in the Mediterranean Sea. So if you go back and look at the map that's on the previous slide, you'll see that when we talk about the Roman Empire, we are talking about the entire Italian peninsula, large chunks of Europe, little bits of Asia and the Middle East, as well as northern Africa. So Roman civilization is going to start in 753 BCE or before Common Era, and then extend all the way to 476 CE or Common Era. Those who were in the Roman Empire were Romans, Greeks, other people that the Romans were able to conquer, as well as slaves who are going to play a very big role in the Roman Empire's economy. Roman civilization is best known for establishing a new form of government called the Republic, probably popularly known for gladiators on the Colosseum, as well as their architecture and other engineering feats. It is important for us to learn about Rome and their legacies because we should be able to recognize them when we see them in the world around us today. So, Rome began in 753 BCE, and it was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, and please, if you're interested in that, go ahead and read that myth somewhere else. But it was a city founded along the Tiber River, right in the middle of the Italian peninsula, along the Mediterranean Sea. When it was first established, it was ruled as a monarchy, meaning that there was a king. The land along the Tiber River was ideal because it had fertile soil, which was good for farming, and so you're going to see a lot of civilizations popping up on rivers, Rome being one of them. There were three groups who originally battled for control of the city of Rome. There were the Latin people, who were farmers, and they were primarily in that area because of the river and the fertile soil. There were the Greeks, who had taken over the southern peninsula of Italy and had spread their culture there a couple centuries before that. And then there were the Etruscans, who were really, really good at metalwork, and so a lot of the engineering is going to come from them. And they also had an alphabet, which would be eventually the basis for the Latin language. We're also going to see, because they're so close in proximity geographically to the Greek civilization, we're going to see a lot of similarities between Greek and Roman civilizations. Also, during the time of the monarchy, Rome is going to be ruled by aristocrats. So it's going to be wealthy, landowning individuals and families who pass down their wealth from generation to generation, who are really the ones who are in charge. Eventually, though, those aristocrats are going to be sick and tired of being passed over, and they are going to overthrow the king because they believe he is a tyrant or somebody who is abusing their power. So in 509 BCE, they overthrew the king Tarquin and established a new form of government called a republic. A republic is a government that has leaders, but those leaders are not kings. Those leaders are instead elected by representatives to make decisions for them. Those representatives are elected by the people. So in the Roman Republic, we're going to see three big groups within the government, but first I want to go over this diagram, and even though it's not in English, we can understand it. At the very top, we have the senators. These are the people who give advice to those larger leaders within the republic, and they are made up of patricians, or these wealthy families that inherit their wealth. They're aristocrats. Below those nobles or patricians, we have the plebes or the plebeians, and those individuals are really just commoners. They make up the majority of the population. All of these groups, senators, nobility, and patricians or plebeians, are considered Roman citizens. But there were non-citizens in the Roman civilization as well. There were freedmen and slaves. Freedmen were people who were formerly slaves but were able to earn their freedom or save up money to buy their freedom. And then slaves were typically not chosen based off of race like they were in the United States or anything like that, but they were because the Roman army was able to conquer their land and then they became slaves. So in the Roman government, you have two consuls rather than just one individual, but two individuals who control the army and government, and they are selected by the assembly, which is a group of citizens who get to propose laws and get to vote, so they get to be a part of the government. And then that assembly is also who chooses 300 patricians who give advice to the consuls, and that is the Senate, so something that we have in common with ancient Rome. After a while, there is a civil war. Julius Caesar takes over, and he is declared dictator for life. Well, the senators get really jealous of his power, and so they actually assassinate him on the Senate floor, and there was like no consequences for that whatsoever. So it's kind of mind-boggling to us, and the big thing that we always talk about and remember. And that all happened in 44 BC. Then all the way from 44 BC through 27 BC, there's kind of a civil war breaking out. And Augustus is Caesar's nephew, and he comes up victorious in that. And he names himself Rome's first emperor. And here you see like a whole big long list of Roman emperors. And some of them were really good, like Augustus helped establish Rome as a modern city for that time. And some of them were like kind of crazy, like Nero, who was accused of burning down the city, which he didn't do. And so all of this is a time period in the Roman Empire where it's sometimes known as the Pax Romana. Pax Romana literally means Roman peace, except for it wasn't a super peaceful time because Rome was taking over other people. However, it was a time of prosperity for the Roman Empire. And so as they took over land, they established provinces and local governments, and those people became a part of the Roman Empire. So they were spreading and establishing that prosperity elsewhere. A lot of this is going to be based off of trade because they got more land. They also got more resources, and those resources were sent back to Rome. Because of this, the Romans were able to create a really, really awesome like highway system of roads, and that's where we get the phrase, all roads lead to Rome. And in this case, we're talking about not Rome the empire, but Rome the city. All roads led back to the city of Rome. So here you have a map just showing like the trade routes and all of these different goods like grain, which is going to be a staple so that people could eat bread. And all of that's going back to the city of Rome. Here's another map that shows not only invasions into the Roman Empire, but also the fact that we have two different color purples there, one denoting the Western Roman Empire in the light purple, the capital of which was Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire in the darker purple, the capital of which was Constantinople. This is because the Roman Empire got so darn huge that they eventually had to split it into two because it was too big for one leader to manage. Without the modern day technology that we have, it was just way too much, and it took too much time, and it was very inefficient. So they decided to split the Roman Empire into two. Some other parts of Roman culture that I just want to make sure that we all understand is their social structure with the emperor on top, senators, patricians, plebeians, freedmen, and slaves making up the bulk of the population down at the bottom, freedmen and slaves. And that's going to be a huge part of what's going to lead to Rome's downfall because there is this huge gap between the people at the top and the people at the bottom. In fact, something that's going to develop in like the last few centuries of Roman Empire's existence is going to be this idea of bread and circuses. So give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. And so literally the people of Rome were each given a certain amount of grain each week, so bread, to feed themselves because they had nothing. And then circuses were public entertainment where anybody could go and get a ticket, and you could go to the Colosseum or Circus Maximus and you could watch the gladiators, or you could watch chariot races and you could watch all of that. And this was to distract the people from how miserable their everyday lives were. This is actually a picture of the Colosseum, which is an amphitheater or like a modern day stadium where those gladiator games were held and other forms of entertainment. And you'll note that on those 3 levels, we see different arches. And this is something that is a feat of Roman engineering that they were able to come up with. Creating that rounded structure was something very distinctly Roman that no other civilization had come up with before. Something that other civilizations had come up with before is columns. And so this building is called the Pantheon. And it features those Greek columns that are very famous. In the back, though, you can see it's kind of rounded and there's this rotunda, and that has a massively huge dome up at the top with an open ceiling, because if it wasn't open, it would be too heavy. It was made of cement and the whole thing would have collapsed. And so the Romans were able to figure that out quite well. They were also able to figure out how to establish and build roads. Like I mentioned before, they had an extensive road system. All roads lead to Rome. But these roads, some of them are still in existence today. They've lasted like 2,000 years. And some of the roads in Mundelein haven't lasted 10 years because they just, don't last. But the Romans were able to figure out a really, really awesome way to do that. They were also able to figure out how to transport water. So the city of Rome was right on the Mediterranean. It's also right along the Tiber River, but those quickly became polluted because there were so many people and there was no indoor plumbing. And so they didn't have drinking water, and they were able to figure out through aqueducts how to transport water from one place all the way into the city of Rome. They also had multiple gods and goddesses, which is again called polytheism. Most of these gods and goddesses were derived from the Greek gods and goddesses because they shared a lot of cultural components. In fact, that building behind them is the Pantheon, which actually means all gods. So it was a building dedicated to all of the gods. Eventually, though, a different religion is going to become popular, and that temple for all of the gods is going to become a Christian church. So Christianity starts in Jerusalem, which is a part of the Roman Empire, and by the 3rd and 4th century is going to spread throughout the Roman Empire and become the official religion of the Roman Empire. Additionally, you're going to have Latin and Roman numerals that are some accomplishments and legacies that we're still going to see. So this is not a good quality map. I apologize for its blurriness, but you can see in the different colors, different Romance languages, and that root word Roman is in there, different languages that are derived from Latin, and we still have a lot of words in English that are derived from Latin. And all of these languages are fairly similar because they share that common connection going all the way back to Roman Latin. And then we've got Roman numerals, which we don't really use, but this is their number system. They didn't have like 1, 2, 3, 4 the way that we do. And so you'll notice like 1 and 10 look nothing alike. And that's probably going to make doing like, long division or complex math quite difficult. So as great as Rome's culture was, and as many accomplishments as they had, and as many of those things that we still see today, Rome is going to fall apart and completely collapse in 476 AD. Literally, people just walked away from the city. The empire was no more, the city was abandoned, and that entire culture and civilization no longer was in existence. Now, there's lots of different causes for the fall of the Roman Empire. Typically, we categorize them into political, social, economic, and military. Most of them are long-term issues that just led to a slow and gradual decline of the empire over a couple hundred years. There was bad leadership, there was a lack of loyalty, there were all sorts of economic issues, including inflation and large gaps between the rich and the poor. There were all sorts of military threats, and then eventually Germanic tribes and Huns were able to invade the Roman Empire and the city of Rome itself, which is going to lead to the official fall of the Roman Empire. So again, you should at this point have really awesome notes on the fall of Rome. If you need to pause, rewind, rewatch, you should absolutely do so. But also, you're going to have more to work with in the next couple of days. This video was only meant to give you a good overview. So with that, we'll see you tomorrow.